Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, I bet you're thinking that this story is something that we would normally do for an April Fool what if, right? But you could never see this happening in the real Dragon Ball series, like with our Caulifla being Goku's daughter shtick. But not so much with this one. This one has some very shapely and well-defined legs. You'll see why in a moment. In any case, it's been a hot while since we've done some sort of shorter format of narrative on this channel. The last one that springs to mind being the case of Frieza becoming the destroyer of Universe 9. You can check that out up top, I'm really proud of that one. And this plot has a similar theme to it. A pretty interesting idea that caught our attention from the comments of our previous videos and the user Keith Cole. So today, let's do some speculative Universe 6 storytelling, shall we? Since the main series isn't going to be doing it or willing to do it anytime soon, let's set the scene and see why Hit could become Champa's greatest replacement as the GOD of Universe 6. It is age 780. And since Universe 7 and 6 are twins, we can assume that they use the same or a similar calendar to one another. We're going to do that anyway for the sake of simplicity, and in order to make things easier for us to all understand and get behind. Oh yeah, and also the Tournament of Paris just happened. In the aftermath of Android 17's wish, and the universes that had been erased subsequently being returned to this mortal coil, things were starting to get back to some semblance of normality. Everything was back to normal, except in one particular den. After being brought back to life, along with the rest of his domain, Champa felt weird. He couldn't quite place it, but the notion of him not being put back together right kept crossing his mind in the days that followed. The restoration of himself and Universe 6. How did it happen? How did it work? He didn't really need to think that long as to figuring out who was responsible. One minute he was being erased, the next he was back in his abode, like time had skipped for some reason, and Hit had nothing to do with it. And funny you should mention time skips. As he looked at the bright light in the sky, he turned his head away and lamented the idea that he had to thank someone for being alive. I won't say thank you, brother. Even though he should be happy, he wasn't. And as the radiant golden colours of the morning sun were flickering around him and the veranda of his palace, Champa simply turned away from it and fell into his nearby chair with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. But this exhaustion was more profound than your typical destroyer workday. I'm getting too old for this, he thought to himself. It had been a good few moments of this contemplation occurring before he realised that the entirety of the Universe 6 team was still on his planet and standing right there in his field of vision. Good thing he wasn't doing anything dodgy. However, he didn't really care all that much. With a wave of his hand, which even that looked half-hearted, he thanked his crew. You all did a good job today. Except you, Rota. He turned away and looked back to the sun. Vados will take you all back home, I guess. Off with you. He waved his hand again with a clear sense of dismissal in his voice. That didn't seem right, thought Kaba. Are you all right, my lord? He said before Caulifla placed a hand on his shoulder. Let the cat nap, pal. I get the feeling he doesn't want to be disrupted. I speak from experience. Champa looked at her and subtly squinted his eyes as if to say she were correct. As they gathered around the angel, preparing to head for their homes, she noticed that they were giving her slightly worried looks. Champa had been praising them just now? He wasn't mad for Universe 6 losing? He surely was glad to still exist, but they could feel that something just didn't click. Even Vados gave them a knowing look, silently implying that she agreed with them, that even she found this behaviour to be out of the ordinary. But she had little time to pander to their whims and worries, as she had to deliver everyone safely back to their homes. I mean, that would take, what, like a couple of hours maybe? Positively interminable for an angel. With her gone, Champa was alone on his planet, staring into the distance, not focusing on anything in particular, and sighed. How long it had been since he took up this role? Millions of years? Billions, maybe? He had been in this role for so long that it was hard to keep count. And that Belmod? He made such a fuss about being in the job for a mere 267,975 years, but no, he, Champa, and technically Beerus, had been there for even longer than that. But even he started to feel really tired with having all this power and influence, especially after the tournament. Zeno had erased more than just his body, but maybe his spirit. Not having to be worried about your mortality for eons, and then coming so close to losing said mortality, a fate worse than death, at least that's what Champa thought, was horrifying. They may have been moved somewhere and not erased, but he had no recollection of where he went, what happened to them between them being erased and them not being erased, their revival. To put things into perspective, nobody could give him any answers, so he had to come up with his own. After who knows how long he had spent staring into space thinking this, he heard Vados coming back, pushing a trolley full of his favourite pastries. Tea time. Lord Champa, I have returned. Here is your pre-dinner treat. For the main course, should we acquire something special? A feast to commemorate our survival? I know we're supposed to be dieting, but I think we can let this slide for today. I'm not really hungry, Vados. Vados, who was usually quite calm, suddenly looked concerned, and not in a joking way. This was something that worried her to her core. Angels would rarely show this level of disquietude, but in this case, this was justified. Lord Champa, is everything all right? Champa looked at her with a weird and uncharacteristic melancholy in his look. She was right. He looked terrible. I think I'm ready to call it a day, my friend. I've been doing this job for far too long. Oh, but you love this job, don't you? You love destroying planets and all the luxuries that go with it? Champa got up and rested his hand on the chair that he was sitting on. Let's say that I don't think that I've been doing my job all that well, when put into perspective. Vados picked up an eclair and ate it. Angels didn't usually eat impulsively, but this was a coping mechanism. Champa didn't care, which made this even worse for her. He did not share food. You know that you cannot just leave, right? There must always be a destroyer in charge. We would need to find and train up a replacement then. Perhaps one of those Saiyans that you've been so interested in. I think that Caulifla might be quite suitable. Hit. I want Hit. Vados flinched. Sire, there is no way Hit's going to agree to that. Well then, I shall talk to him and force him to do so. I mean, convince him to do so. We don't force people to do things anymore. No more forcing. Convincing. Yes. And as several days passed, they decided to find a way of approaching Hit about the position in one of his temporary quarters. Visiting the assassin was always a bit of an exercise, even for them, because despite his deep expertise and fame, as well as his rumoured wealth, his living conditions were surprisingly modest, Spartan even. All he had to his name were a bed, a wardrobe, and a single bookshelf, as well as a computer terminal. He could have retired ages ago with his money, but he chose to live sparingly. No, he said outright when he heard Champa's offer. Not a moment of consideration was given. What do you mean, no? I am your god of destruction. I can command you to become my student and let me guess, you'll destroy me. I've heard it before, Champa. It means nothing to me. Hit looked bored, but chose to add to his cynical statement. Look, with all due respect, I'm uninterested in taking up your mantle. Try asking one of the Saiyans to do it. Or Frost. He'll leap at the chance to be famous again. Upon reflection, Saiyans would be, too eager, and they lack experience anyway. And I do not trust Frost. I do trust you, however. And listen, how different would the gig be to what you currently do? You destroy individuals. How different would that be from destroying a planet? I said no, Champa. And besides, there is a difference. I do not kill innocents, or those that don't come with a price tag. Champa looked angry and desperate now, but before he managed to stumble over his words even more, Vados decided to take the wheel. You know, Hit, there is more to the role than just blowing things up. Gods of destruction tend to have their own little competitions from time to time. I bet these are opponents like you have never faced before, hmm? Hit hesitated for a moment. Would they be stronger than Goku? Vados nodded. Much so. Hit looked away for a second. Vados sensed a breach in his defenses. Victory? But that would bind me to a very specific set of rules. I do not work well with other people's rules. If you think about it, these rules are not so different to your own code. You are only required to destroy planets that put the universe at risk. I understand the confusion, given Champa and his brothers' more trigger-happy practices. But we believe that your personal code is what makes you the perfect candidate. Besides, there seriously is not anyone else stronger than you in this universe. Think about it as us contracting you to assassinate planets. Vados looked at Champa knowingly, but the cat god was not happy about what he was about to do. But he had managed to pluck up the courage to look Hit dead in the eye and say, "Hit, please, you are my only chance at freedom." Hit looked at the cat puzzled. "Freedom? You're serious?" "Yes, I am done with all this. I don't want ever to repeat the Tournament of Power and its fallout ever again. I just want to leave the universe in good hands is all, and live out my days in peace." Hit looked at his apartment, and after a long pause, he finally spoke up. "Here's how it's going to go. I will train with you for a while. If I do not like it, you will have to find somebody else. You can destroy me, I don't care. But if I don't feel like continuing, you cannot make me continue." Before the tournament, Champa would have probably punished him for such a defiant act of behaviour, but currently, he was just glad that Hit was going to go along with this, for at least the short term, and as such, the assassin became the cat's apprentice, much to the delight of Fua, who considered Hit a rather dashing individual, and sometimes came along to just watch him train. Champa started with teaching Hit something that he, himself, and Beerus were repeating to themselves like a mantra. "Before creation comes destruction." And Hit had to admit that Champa, he was bally well fast, crikey. He knew that his new mentor was stronger than him, but when he moved, he was much quicker and graceful than what his silhouette might have suggested, and he had a great control over his power, something that Hit, with his 1,000 years of experience, might have taken for granted. Still though, he realized that, in most cases, evaporating a single pebble might actually be harder than making a crater. The energy of destruction was a new experience altogether. And although he seemed to be more interested in Vados' style of fighting, something that he thought would fit him more, and was also a good conduit toward that Ultra Instinct thing that Son Goku had showcased during the tournament, he had to, as a potential candidate, delve into the raw, untamed, destructive power of Hakai instead of the angelic path. The energy of destruction had always felt a little crass to him, a little over the top, not subtle, not his style. But Champa was slowly, but surely showing him that there was a certain art to it, that you could shape this overblown spiky mace of power into a subtle dagger if you worked hard enough on it. With that in mind, Hit began to like it. Although his mind was really set on at least partially achieving a state of Ultra Instinct in the long run, it had opened up before him a whole new pathway of possibilities, as he could mix his time skip abilities with the new things that he was learning. "Every god of destruction," explained Champa, "deals with their powers in their own way. Myself and Beerus, we like to go big. Our energy is what defines us, but take that clown Belmont, for example. He has mastered the art of infusing objects with his power. That may be something worth thinking about. Or take Kitella. The rat may not be the strongest of us, not by a long shot, but he's pretty quick and can paralyze your nerves without looking. Something that feels rather assassiny. All of us have figured those techniques on our own. You do not need to feel pressured into doing things like I do." Hit began to gain a newfound respect towards Champa. It was as if those training sessions took the cat away from a long period of stagnation, made him feel alive again, and he was making incredible progress. Usually to get to his level, it would take many years, probably decades, but Hit was already very impressive, and he indeed had managed to figure things out at an alarming pace. One of the most amazing feats he had acquired was simply time skipping an Akai attack, something that made Champa's day greatly. But when he thought about it, it made sense. He recalled how fast Hit adapted to Goku's power in the first contest that he had performed in, the Universe 6 tournament. Now, he was showing this improvement potential here. Wow! But this also meant that Hit's heart was really into this training. And honestly, so was Champa's. After one of those training sessions, Champa finally got asked a question from Hit. "What will become of you after you retire?" "I will lose my memories from my days here as a god. I will lose my powers and just age at a normal pace for my species. I'll probably ask the Grand Minister to move me somewhere calm and warm with good food. A simple life. I had no idea you wanted that. Neither did I until recently. I always loved luxury. It can become tiresome after a while. What will your brother say about your resignation? Champa looked away. Oh, that fool. I haven't told him yet. Hit felt that his mentor would rather avoid this topic. Despite the two gods bickering all the time, he knew that somewhere beyond all of that, they had a special bond. A bond that they might not even realize existed. You should tell him. Champa sighed. Yeah, probably. Now rest of it. No slacking on your training. If we do it right, you'll be able to transform with the power of destruction. You'll be really close to assuming the role. Then he left Hit for a while, Hit deciding to meditate. He learned this trick from watching Jiren, though it wasn't entirely unlike him to do so. He allowed the power of destruction to flow through his body, something that would burn away the veins of weaker beings, but was now weirdly harmonic in its system. How would he want his new form to manifest itself? A destroyer form like Toppo, perhaps, with huge bulky muscles? Or maybe something like Vegeta, that whole ultra ego thing that Vados had shown him the other day. Apparently the Universe 7 Saiyans weren't keeping idle. No, Hit would do things his own way. As he focused the energy within, he started to spontaneously time skip. He knew that he had to pick the right moment in which to let the energy flow through at full pelt. And as he was skipping time, between the very essence of time itself, he let go and allowed the energy to reshape him. What came out wasn't like anything he experienced before. As he picked up the pebble, once he regained full consciousness, he simply focused on it, letting it slowly decay thanks to the powers of Akai. As his body was still getting used to his new transformation, the name of it popped into his head on its own. Hit, the contractor of destruction. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. But don't worry, tune in this Saturday for the conclusion. I'll see you there. Catch you later.